Hey, Colin here, aka the Mindset Guy, with today's training video, which is all about self-esteem. And it's the first part of a three-part series that I'm going to put out over the next 3 weeks. And the inspiration for this video come from actually a really tragic story that I read in the newspaper. Now, I don't typically read the news or watch the news that much. I'm what I call a light news reader or watcher. So I'll have a look every now and again, I'll see what's going on and then see what stories grab my interest. And the reason is that the news is so negative, right? It's so biased negative. It's not balanced at all, far from balanced, apart from the good news is, right at the end of the news. But I picked up the newspaper and I was reading the story about a young girl, teenage girl, beautiful young girl, who had committed suicide. And one of the challenges for the family was that she had got addicted to these self-harm websites that glorify self-harm and glorify suicide. And these young girls, will injure themselves and then they'll put these pictures up and they have a lot of people that comment, well done. So it's all about who can injure themselves more. And now, I don't have all the facts, and it also talks about other stories in there as well of other girls, 2 other girls that actually committed suicide. And as I say, I don't have all the facts here and I'm hypothesizing, but I wonder how much self-esteem or lack of it played a part in these girls' lives. And the devastation, I'm a parent myself, so to lose a child through such tragic circumstances, it's just hard to get your head around. And so I thought, right, okay, so, I understand a little bit about self-esteem. This is a journey I've been on myself. So how can I put together some information on this? And if you've watched my videos, in the style that I do it, which is to use something pictorial, but also to make sure at the end I give you something practical that you can do in order to take yourself to the next level of whatever we're talking about. So let's start here by talking about, well, what is self-esteem? Now, self-esteem is it's a global evaluation of our self-worth. It's the emotional component of our personality, of what makes up our personality. And high self-esteem is all about having, a high regard for oneself, to like and love oneself. And this is backed on research, this isn't Colin Hiles' say, but individuals with high self-esteem are more successful based on their definition of success, not necessarily what society says. They have better relationships, deeper, more meaningful relationships. They're more effective at what it is that they are attempting to do. They're better learners, and so on. I can go on and on and on, right? So there's a huge value in high self-esteem. In fact, it is the foundation of a happy, successful life. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, low self-esteem, and I'm going to spend more time talking about the symptoms of low self-esteem in a later video. But certainly we know that individuals with low self-esteem will suffer with anxiety issues. And think about the implications of anxiety issues. They suffer with depression, possibly, and all that goes with that, psychological issues and psychological problems. So, not great, and leads to decisions that are not, as we've seen, as I've talked about, not great decisions, right? So, there are 2 factors that make up self-esteem, like 2 sides of the coin. There's worthiness, and then there's self-concept. Now, worthiness is all about how much we like and love ourselves. And it's a personal assessment, whereas self-concept is more about our level of confidence and ability to do something. So that's more of a performance assessment. Now, in video number 3, I'm going to spend more time up here and explain more about the self-concept. But in the first 2 videos, I really want to spend some time down here looking at worthiness. Now, let's put worthiness then on a scale, okay? So at this end of the scale, we'll call this a 10. This is where we like ourselves, we have high regard for ourselves, and we accept ourselves for who we are. Whereas at this end of the spectrum, this is, self-dislike, we are highly judgmental of ourselves, and can loathe and hate ourselves as well, to the furthest extreme. That would be a 1, right? So all of us, you and me, are somewhere on this scale right now. We have a default, like a resting heart position. We have a sort of a resting self-worthiness. And of course that can be affected because these two here are constantly interacting with one another here. So if I'm feeling good about myself, then and I'm, go to do something, I get a good result, it causes me to feel good about myself, and you can see that this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the opposite is true. If I don't feel too good about myself, then I probably don't get a good result, I don't have low self-confidence, comes back round, I don't feel too good about myself, right? So you'll see that how that works. So really at this end of the spectrum, this is how comfortable we are in our skin. And if I talk about my own experience, as I've got older now, I hit the big 5-0 last year, I'm definitely becoming more comfortable in my skin. And you read actresses and actors, typically because they get in the media, right, where they'll talk about they get to a certain age and then they become really comfortable in their skin. But do we have to wait before we get to a certain age, right? My research on one of my websites shows that typically, the younger generation are happy, the elder generation are very happy and comfortable in themselves. And it's us in the middle here that can be a little bit screwed up, right? So it tends to look like this, sort of the U shape, if you know what I mean. So we don't have to wait. There's things that we can do to improve our self-regard, self-worth. And that's what I want to talk about in this video here. Now, there's a key question that we need to ask ourselves. And we probably don't ask ourselves this question very often. And when we do, we may get a superficial answer rather than the real answer. And that question is, do I like me? Right? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Do I like me? Do I really like me? I don't know. It's a really important question. And if I give you an example, I'm going to change this person's name just to protect their privacy. So I work a lot in the corporate world, and I was doing a conference, and the CEO, so 3 years in of a major UK business, came up to me during the break and said, Colin, can I have a word with you? Something I just want to talk to you about. And so we sort of headed off, and he said, look, I'd really like some coaching on something. So with my PA, can I arrange a time with you to come in and sit down and work this through with me? He wouldn't say anything more than that. So we sat down, and I sort of started to give me an idea of what was going on. He's 3 years in, he's not really getting on with the chairman of the company, and he wants to know what he can do about it. But as we built rapport and in the protection of this space where no one could hear, he gradually started to open up about certain things. And one of the questions I asked him is, look, before we figure out what's going on in this relationship with the chairman that you think that doesn't like you, my question to you is, do you like you? And you could see him sort of, and then his head dropped and his demeanor dropped, and he went, not really, no. And he then went on to talk about he's never really felt comfortable in the role, and how he felt he's got this imposter syndrome, and then he talked back to his other career and past career, etc., and he actually into his upbringing as well, and that he's never really felt comfortable in his skin. He's always had a degree of insecurity about himself, and that was very honest of him. I've got to say, I coach a lot of people, and they wouldn't typically be that honest, and they wouldn't typically be that frank and candid with me. They would say, no, I think I like myself quite a lot. Now, how did this lack of self-liking show up? Well, just to give you some of the symptoms we're going to talk about, but for him. So, he thought he was an imposter, so he would typically spend an incredible amount of time at work. He was a workaholic, right? In the hope that he would make up for his perceived insecurity with the chairman and with the board and with the team. He also, whenever there were any meetings that went on, he would always want to get control of the meeting. He would have to make sure that he had something witty to say, or that he had something insightful to say. He always had to have an answer, and he would always have the last word, right? But the impact of this was the amount of stress that he was living under every single day. He put 2 stone on in weight. He had ulcers in his stomach, and he also had irritable bowel syndrome. So not in a good state physically, right? And of course, the amount of time he was spending at work was having a big impact on his family at home. So when we started talking, and when we got into this in more detail, we got to the crux of this. And I want to talk about the crux of it on the next video, right? But on this video right now, I want you to really answer 3 questions, all right? And make sure that you answer these 3 questions before you watch the next video, which, you know, or depending on where you're watching this, will either be the next video you watch or next week, right? When I actually launch it. So here are the 3 questions I want you to put pen to paper to and really think about. So here's your 3 questions. Question number 1, how do I rate my self-worth now? And I want you to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. You know, 1 being, I don't rate my self-worth that much, and 10 being, I rate it about as best as it could be. Second question, if it's less than 10, list 3 reasons why. And then number 3, what are 3 key or main things you do to be liked by others and feel likable? All right, so I want you to think about, how do you get approval? How do you prove success? How do you show status? What do you do to win others over? And that can be a really insightful question. So make sure that you answer those 3 questions. And then when I come back, we're going to take what you've put down and see how it maps into this model. And I'm also going to share with you what was at the crux of that CEO that I worked with. What was the thing that we needed to work on more than anything else to begin the journey in this direction. So, as you know, I'd like you to give me feedback. 1 being didn't enjoy it, Colin. 10 being really good, really enjoyed it. Start sharing these videos. You know, it's my hope and my intent that someone somewhere gets to watch, see, and I'm not the only one out there talking about self-esteem. There's plenty of others, but I can only do what I do, and gets to see or watch this and this whole series, and it might just mean they make a different decision. So once again, thank you very much for your participation and also your interest, and I'll see you on the next video.